Hey everybody, and welcome to our Inspiring Leadership interview series. This week we'll be discussing collaboration, honesty, transparency, and trust. Jonathan, who are we interviewing this week?
Thanks, Ben, and welcome to my favourite time of the week. And we are very honoured to have Charlotte Valeur. Charlotte has had a fascinating career. At the moment, her group is called the Global Governance Group, and she was formerly the chair of the Institute of Directors, the IOD. She's currently the chair of Blackstone Group, and she's a member of the Primary Markets Group at the London Stock Exchange, and she's a NED to a number of organisations, including Laing O'Rourke and NTR. Charlotte, great to have you on the series.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the kind introduction.
It's lovely having you here. So let's go straight into the kind of roles that you're doing at the moment, and the journey that took you, your life journey that took you into the kind of work you're doing now.
Thank you. Well, I guess my life journey started in Denmark, where I'm originally born. Going into banking straight from A level as an apprentice. After a few years, really feeling that being a stock exchange trader was quite a good idea. And in the happy 80s, that was a very different way of operating. So I managed to get myself onto the London Stock Exchange floor, dealing and running mortgage-backed securities and all these kind of interesting things during the 87 crash, which was also interesting. But you learn a lot from those things. I then moved to London in 91 and was dealing rooms in London throughout the 90s. Until I had my first child in 99, took a couple of years out and set up my own company, which eventually then led me to do a joint venture and move to Jersey in 2006. And from there on, I got asked, would I go on various boards, which I wasn't really that interested in because I was quite busy. But in the end, I said yes. And that started 15 years ago, my career as within corporate governance, which I have been smitten by. But through all out that, I have very strong focus on the things that I have today interest in. I did realize 5 years ago that I'm also autistic, and that has definitely made my career.
That is a really interesting area, and Ben and you and I had a discussion before we came on air, because I found also that I'm neurodiverse. Mine is dyslexia. I can't even get the word out, can I? So, I have a problem. Spelling, reading, writing, and maths. And I just thought, and I was told by my teacher when I was about 7 that I was thick and I was going to become a dustman unless I could improve my maths and English. And for years, believed I was thick. And people that know me now probably still think I'm thick, but I was convinced.
Not.
I think that's how I ended up being Ben's visiting professor of leadership at Cass Business School, to prove that teachers were wrong. But tell us, Charlotte, you were talking about the fact that your son is autistic, and you were encouraged to take the test and find out that you were neurodiverse with the autism. But you also thought you were dumb, and people said, you're not very bright. But tell us a bit about that and how you came out about it, and the impact of neurodiversity group you set up.
It was quite odd. I didn't do very well in school at all. I was distinctly unfocused and in my own world. Unfortunately, my mother died when I was 7 from breast cancer, so it was always probably put to that as being the reason I was so absent and in my own world, except my sister wasn't. But obviously we're different people. So I just slaved my way through, and it wasn't until I started in banking that I really found what I really loved. And that made me really focus a lot on doing well at work. Well, it wasn't that I focused on, I just liked it. So I just automatically kind of did well, right? And then I just reach. I guess I have a tendency to reach for things that are quite a little bit out of my reach. Maybe I just haven't got this awareness of you shouldn't do that. I just do it. And then it happened that I got it on several occasions. So that reinforced that behavior, obviously, for the better.
I love that. And my experience with many of the senior executives, CEOs, chairmen that I've come across in the top of some organizations, mainly in the sort of commercial and financial services sector, is there's quite a high proportion who are neurodiverse, and they often find out like you did, reverse way from their son, and the teachers go this, because of course in our days no one tested us. They just wrote us off or made a judgment on it.
Yeah.
Very interested that you were involved in mortgage-backed securities, because having read many books around this topic, listening to audiobooks, because that's my way of learning, that obviously this was at the basis of many of the problems. Did you know at the time? Because what came in some of the great books about how they discovered that the crash was going to come in 2008 was a couple of the people, particularly very clever autistic bankers, spotted what was happening. Did you find you were aware all those time ago that there was a problem with this? It would lead to problems. Could you see it then?
We didn't see it at the time, but I say when I traded mortgage-backed securities was back in the 80s, and in Denmark, everyone who has a house has a loan in the house of length of 30 years. So for us, it's all very normal that you buy a house and there's a loan in it, and you can trade in and out of that loan, even as a private investor. So they serve a very functional purpose, if you see what I mean. We didn't really see the issues that could come along with it. And I think there are some slight differences on the American mortgage-backed securities to the ones we have in Denmark.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And thinking back to yourself when you were 18-year-old, and as you say, it's interesting, neurodiverse people, particularly female neurodiverse leaders, and you found that 80% of those who got to the level that you've got to as chair, NED, CEO, when you really challenge them, they realize that they've probably got children who are neurodiverse, and they're quite masculine in the way the brain works and thinks. You describe yourself as quite a tomboy as you're growing up, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
What
my dad kept telling me, I didn't actually really notice. My dad just kept saying, "You're such a tomboy." I was like, really? I didn't play football. I was not very good at sport at all. So.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. And I just see Sean Taylor's on. Sean, lovely to have you on with your comments. And anyone in the derivative world had an inkling, as you were saying then. But this thing about you back at 18 years old as a tomboy, what bit of advice, with the wisdom you've accumulated now from lots of successes and probably lots of mistakes, as we all do make, would you give your 18-year-old self that's a good bit of wisdom from now, all that you've learned? To back?
I would as it happened, I was lucky, but pursue what you feel passionate about and ensure that you know yourself, right? Self-development is one of the key areas. And so I have teenage children, and I tell them just those things. For me, those are really, really important. You know, we can know a lot of rich people that are not very happy or content in their life. So I think what you need to do is to fulfill your own personal purpose and have some awareness of it. And that will lead you in the right direction throughout your life.
Yeah. And that comes across so strongly. Those who have a sense of meaning and purpose. Indeed, I was reading an article about how to cope with mental health issues, which I had some earlier this year, and before that, when things were so tough, that having a sense of meaning and purpose in your life really can help you cope with that. So great that you've fulfilling your purpose. As you think back over that life journey, you've done an awful lot in your life. What have been your proudest moments and some of your darkest moments, and what did they teach you?
It's interesting. Every time we talk about that, I always have to sort of say, well, there are two kinds, right? So you've got your personal proudest and darkest, and you've got your business proudest and darkest. I think if we try to mix those, the personal ones will always be bigger. For me, they certainly. I mean, for me, I mean the proudest, everything to do with my children. I mean, it's giving birth to a child is just beyond this world. It's just one of the biggest things you can experience. And I wish for everybody to have that experience. It was just extraordinary. And once I had one, I wanted another and another. And we were trying for number 4, but luckily I couldn't have any more. Otherwise I would have had more. So I have 3 now, and I'm very blessed, very, very blessed. Every single day they achieve something. It's just like extremely proud. And also, they're the only people in the world that I will give my life for within a snaps. I wouldn't even think about it. I would just do it but obviously I wouldn't for anyone else because I have to be there for my children, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I think on career-wise, I really did feel incredibly proud when I became the chair of the IOD. It was definitely step up in terms of profile and everything, and I never saw myself as part of the establishment. So I did say to them when they approached me and said, we've had your name put in the hat. I said, look, I don't think I'm appropriate for that role. I'm not the kind of people you have. And by the way, you need change, and don't talk to me if you don't want change. So they talked, and and I was surprised I didn't know till the very day they told me, and it felt surprising. Yeah, but I was very proud. And the saddest time was when unfortunately I divorced my children's father 10 years ago. And after a couple of years, it was not possible for me to financially still be in the same house that my children had been in for many years, and I had to sell it because I didn't earn enough money. That was not great. That was pretty low. That was a low year, a very low year.
Yeah, I think anybody who's been through separation and divorce, as I have as well, it's I think the grimmest part of their life.
Not good.
No, and if it's not the darkest part of their night, then something's a bit wrong, that they really don't care about people or their children or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky my children are healthy, because if they were not, that would be my darker past, right? I mean, because I can't imagine anything worse than your children somehow becoming very ill or maybe even dying. That I cannot even think about that without tearing up.
No, I completely get that. And in work-wise, what has been a dark moment for you in all the different roles and different jobs and things you've done?
To be honest, it was quite difficult at the end at the IOD, and I had to make a decision that was very difficult for me to make, which was to leave a position before my term was up. That's not something I do lightly, and it took me months to come to that decision. It was very disappointing, and I was quite concerned that it would also affect how people would view me professionally. But I would hope that 38 years of working hard and doing okay wouldn't be overshadowed by that. So that was not great. I was made redundant as well back in the 90s, but so was everyone else. So it's like, okay, just get out, put your head down and get another job. So that happened relatively quickly. So that was fine. But I learned from all of that, right? I mean, I learned from those things. I mean, I learned to reach for what is out of reach, right? Or what is perceived to be out of reach. I think that's a great learning that I've probably done a lot of my life, but now when you come up, the pyramid, it gets sort of narrower and narrower the higher to the top you come. So you have to reach for things that you feel quite vulnerable when you reach for positions that you kind of feel maybe it's not for me. But then I say to myself, well, I'll reach for it, and then it's the people who judge me in the interviews that will have to make that decision, right? And I think the biggest learning is around becoming a parent and how to love someone more than you love yourself in your own life.
Yeah, love is a very key component. We talk about
really is.
Yeah, love, trust, and the rules. In Professor Roger Steer, my friend who did the moral DNA coding, that these are the three things that we look at in ethics and ethicability, and often people forget about love.
Yeah.
Indeed, when I was doing the Inspiring Leadership book, I was going to call it Loving Leadership, because I think really inspiring leaders who have humility and humanity and humor, like you do, you have all three. Really, and I was chuckling away with you before we started. They also love and care for the people they lead and also their own family too. That balance between the two, because you can get it so badly wrong that you're so focused on your work.
Yeah.
People who actually are your biggest legacy.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I was just going to ask you, habits, healthy, wealthy, and wise. This is Ben's three little ones, and I think they're great. What would be a tip that's kept you healthy during the pandemic? And how do you, particularly having been through a time of having to lose your house with the divorce and things, what lesson have you learned about money, and what bit of wisdom would you share for us all to listen to?
So I think with healthy, it really, I mean, apart from obviously living healthily, eating well, exercising, and this, I move a lot. Maybe I even have a bit of ADHD as well. I don't know. But, so I get natural exercise all the time because I just move a lot. I walk very fast. I do everything fast. So I think healthy is very much for me on the mental, keep mentally healthy, and I feel that we do that better when we live by our own inner purpose. But I think too many people are not fully aware of their own purpose, and your own purpose is built of your passions and your values, right? That becomes your purpose. And I guess when I'm passionate about something, I'm very passionate, and that's probably the autistic part of me that comes in there. And therefore, I have been driving that way automatically. So even though life has been quite challenging at times from when I was very young, my passions have sort of carried me through, and that focus I was able to have on those things and then eliminate everything else. I don't focus on negativity. I focus on the positive outcome of whatever happens and where we can drive ourselves positively. And I think that has helped me with my finances. I was always someone who saved money. I always had backup money in the bank. This was the one point when I had to sell the house in my life where it just ran out, and I was a single mom with 3 kids, and it was tough, and there was nowhere to turn. So that really taught me, when I looked at my business at the time, I had a couple of directorships as well, and I thought, this is really unhealthy that I'm so dependent on income from directorships that cannot work at all. So that's why I would rather take down my cost as much as I could to relieve myself from being so dependent on income from a company you're serving as a director. So I will always ensure that I have twice as much income than I need, so that there's no single job. What could you lose independence if you're financially dependent on a job, right? So you don't make the right decisions because you're too scared to lose the job. So this is a really, really key learning, and I'll pass it on to as many people as I can. Never be financially dependent on something where your independence is really, really needed. So, and in terms of WISE, I think it just is that ongoing self-development, especially after 40. I trained as a kinesiologist as well, where we sort of alternative healing or whatever you want. And that sort of, it just rounds you to do all different things. I'm a painter as well. I paint abstract oil on canvas, and that helps. Wisdom, in a sense that when I do that, it kind of clears things out, and you can then listen to the voice from within, which is where we have quite a lot of wisdom sitting that we are not always listening to.
Fascinating. We've got a number of questions. If we could put Don McIntyre's question. If you can see there, you come across as very pragmatic, grounded, and will play the hand you're dealt. Is this natural or something you've consciously worked on, Charlotte?
I think it's natural. I actually can't be anything but me. So it's a bit, when people were playing role plays and stuff like that, I just can't. I never did. I just don't. It doesn't. My sister used to be really good at being 2 different people. Like, we were in one place and she would be one way, and it was always hugely confusing to me how she could be different in different places. I just can't. It's not within me. I can't lie either, which is not always great because lies are kind of easy sometimes. But my son can't either, so I never ask him, does my bum look big in this? Because he'll probably say, yeah.
That is so great. Well, that was we were discussing that lovely play in the book, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night, about the son who was autistic and an investigator. He looked into a murder and found out. It's just a great story. Catherine Bordino, who I know and like very much. Can we hear more from Charlotte about setting boundaries?
Setting boundaries is not always easy, and that is something I've had to consciously work on. I find it very hard to say no. So actually, my children has helped me find that in there. Like, could you just not spend all this time helping so many people because we want time with you? And that's the kind of thing I needed to hear, that actually I need to give to the people that deserves it first, which is my children, and then give. So I had to also, so with children, as being a parent, you also have to set boundaries. And I promised myself, it happened, as it probably happens to all parents sometimes, that you just explode in anger, right? Because they push your buttons in so many ways. And I don't like myself when I do that at all. So it happened a few times, and I thought, I have to set the boundaries before I get this angry. And that is my responsibility, not someone else's. So it sounds as if a lot came around my children, but because it did. They were really pushing me quite hard. Well, with business, it's just business. I don't get too sort of bogged up with it. But when emotions are in play, it's hard, right?
Yeah, that's really good response. And I've been enjoying listening to an audio book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff.
Yeah.
And Dr. Carlson is the guy who wrote the book, Richard Carlson. And in it, he said, you don't need to catch every ball that's thrown at you. And I'm a bit like you. And certainly my wife leads charity and coaches and speaks and does podcasts. She catches almost every ball that's thrown at her. And I tend to do the same. And we don't have to catch every ball. Someone gave me a good technique. I don't know whether you've tried it yourself, where it's literally when they ask you, you say, well, thank you. I'm greatly honored you've asked me that. My heart says I'd love to do that, but my head says I know I have not got the space for that. And if I did that, I'd spend less time with my wife and my 4 children, and I don't do that. And I'm not prepared to sacrifice for them. So I think making
people get that, right?
Yeah, they're not the right kind of people anyway. If they don't respect you, you have your own life.
There's a great book on that from a guy called Derek Sivers. He did a TED talk on it as well, and it's a real simple just filter. Every time you're given like a proposition or an ask or something that someone wants you to do, if it's not hell yeah, it's probably a no.
Yeah.
And that's how he sort of filters all the things he's offered. If it's not a hell yeah, not a yeah maybe, it has to be a hell yeah, and then it's a yes.
Good one.
I love that, man. That's really good. And also a friend of mine, his name's just gone out of my head, but it'll come to me. He uses the 4-box matrix when you're making a decision: head, heart, gut, and wallet. And does it make logical sense? With 89 billion neurons, does it resonate with your heart and what you love doing? Does your gut feel right about it? And logically, is the money and everything else that goes with it, does it make sense? It's more for recruiting. And I thought that was great. The final bit, the bit of wisdom. What was your bit of wisdom? We had your money, but what would bit of wisdom that you'd pass on to people? A bit of really good practical common sense.
So in terms of passing wisdom on, or how I develop it, I mean, I think
wisdom on, bit of a wisdom.
For me, you must follow your passions. I honestly think that the people who don't do that end up depressed, because your body knows when you don't do it, right? And so everything I'm involved with has to do with one way or the other making the world a better place. That's my passion, right? And equality is my passion. So it's those things, everything evolves around now. It didn't do it back in the 80s when I was stock exchange trader, right? That was more sort of a survival game, but I had a lot of fun as well. But it was like everybody eats everybody. But now I can actually say no. I want to improve governance, improve leadership, so we make better decisions and leave a better world. And I want to do everything I can so that we have equality for everyone. I've just written a blog around discrimination of men, because men get very discriminated at, fathers especially, and we need to fix that. When we fix that, we fix, inequality for women too.
I'm pleased you say that. Having dealt, as I've had to do with courts quite a lot, I find the courts very biased towards the ex-wife and not the husband, even though
yes, they are.
The data
needs to stop.
They go, no. Oh, the poor Victorian era women, they're poor thing. No, they're completely independent and able to look after themselves.
That's right.
In many cases, not in all cases, because we also run a charity for vulnerable women, and we come across many who are being abused and need help.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic as always, Charlotte. My last 2 questions before I hand over to Ben. What, in your view, makes a good, inspiring leader, and who would you consider a couple of inspiring leaders? These are my 2 questions for you.
I mean, for me, I'm back on the passion, right? An inspiring leader is someone who has passion, because that passion comes across. And when you talk with passion, people listen and they remember, and you touch your emotions, you show your own abilities, and you touch people's emotions. And I think that's what leaders should be doing, so that people will follow them, right? I mean, one of my sort of old-time big leaders that I look up to is Martin Luther King. Unfortunately, not alive anymore, but I mean, he made people follow him at a very young age, right? With a humble passion and with non-violent sort of disobedience, if you want. I just think he was extraordinary, an extraordinary human being. And then clearly they felt he was so extraordinary, they need to get rid of him, unfortunately, which is often what happens to the good people. Well, bad people kills good people tend to not kill bad people, so the bad people generally survive more. That's my little pocket. pocket.
I think it's very true, and I'm a bit concerned in the American situation whether Biden and Harris will get taken out by some lunatic fringe Trump supporter because he doesn't like that his person hasn't won, and they won't accept that they've lost.
You just don't know. It's a risk, right? It's a risk. I mean, Jacinda Ardern is another fantastic current leader that really shows the way to how you can lead with kindness. I love that. We need much more of that in the world of people I have closer in my circles. Ray O'Rourke from Laing O'Rourke is a leader I have a huge amount of respect for. I watch him how he leads a massive construction company, has led it through COVID. I mean, he has strong values, and people. Ray O'Rourke, right? So he's one of the owners of Laing O'Rourke. People just follow him in thick and thin. It's just extraordinary how the staff really care for him and how he cares for them. All of them, all sort of 8,000 or whatever of them. So those kind of leaders are quite special. And another one is Margaret Casely Hayford that I've had the pleasure to work a little bit with through Board Apprentices, a charity that I run to get diverse leaders onto board. She just gives and gives and gives. And I reached out to her, she didn't know me at all, and just talked about how this was a very important area. And she's been an amazing ambassador in pushing things forward to make changes at leadership level.
Thank you very much. Ben, over to you.
Great. Charlotte, it's been a great interview so far. Really inspiring. Anybody that's listening, if you've got any questions, we'd love to hear from you, or any comments, please do post them up and we'll include them in the interview. I think that you're quite clearly sort of inspiring on loads of different levels, Charlotte, and something that I was picking up on particularly is you seem to have an ability to still sort of reach for that next thing, that next sort of rung on the ladder, and be really quite confident within it. And I think probably that a lot of people who are maybe not neurotypical and women don't always do that. Have you got any good advice to people to sort of reach for things which maybe seem seemingly outside their comfort area a little bit?
It's the fear. You have to remove the fear. So fear is manufactured in our mind. Fear is not real, right? Love is real. We feel it. We are love, right? Fear is not real. Anything fear that you put into your head is manufactured. It's a fear of this could happen or that could happen, and this happened in the past, and then you project your fears from the past into the future or into the now when you don't know, right? So the one thing I said to myself, but probably tainted by my mother dying when I was so young, and she was only 36. The life that she didn't have, it was like, at least I could honor her by making sure that I lived to the full and didn't just. So my dad also said, who also unfortunately passed away 10 years ago, he always said to me, jump on life before life jumps on you. And I thought that's the one I've been holding on to, because, you've got to steer your life. You make decisions every day, right? Every one of us make decisions every day. Every one of us are leaders of ourselves, right? First you lead yourself, then you might lead a team, and then you might lead something bigger. But we all lead ourselves every single day. And if we don't accept that we make decisions every day, and they're our decision, we can also make a decision to not make a decision, which is giving our power away. But that is still a decision, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the fear, watch out for the fear. It's manufactured. It doesn't exist. Kill it.
Yeah, I love that. I really, really like that way of thinking of things. And I often sort of look at things when that sort of fear comes up and just always say, well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen?
And if you live your life in fear, I used to say,
Yeah.
I don't want to be 50 and look back and think, why didn't I do this, that, and the other? Because nothing happened, right? But now that I am past 50, I have to say, I don't want to be 75 and look back and think, why didn't I do this? So I have done what I wanted to do. I have reached for what I wanted to reach for. I moved country and lived on my own, away from my family. All my family is still back in Denmark. Yeah, that was a bit uncomfortable, right? But it didn't kill me, and you become stronger every time you go through hard times. You're out on the other side, you are stronger. It might not initially feel like it, but you are stronger, right?
Yeah, and most things are reversible as well. You can
totally, totally. I mean,
yeah, no, fantastic, and I think that's probably hit a nerve with a few people. Catherine has made the comment. RE fear, too right. I often recommend feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah, definitely. It's exhilarating.
Fear sometimes it makes you alive. It makes you feel I'm alive, right? If we just sit and hide in our house, it's just not good for us.
Yeah, definitely. And
except if we're in isolation, of course.
Sure. We've got a question from Claire who'd like to know where you see yourself in 5 years' time.
So I have a 5-year plan of growing my company that I started back in 2009 to be more of a global governance group that could have an impact globally. I'm publishing a book about governance. Funny that. Hopefully in Q1 of next year. About what questions to ask in a boardroom, and that will be published as an open access, so people can download it for free everywhere. We work a lot in Commonwealth and in developing countries on helping them with governance, and work with London Stock Exchange as well on that. And I would like to hope that in 5 years' time, that organization has its own value, and it can either be passed on to other people, or I can develop it further. It can be something that stays beyond me.
Okay, so obviously we've all gone through a collective experience over the last year of COVID, and it's been one which has affected people in many different ways. It'd be great to sort of know what happened in your life, both professionally and personally, because of the COVID crisis.
To be absolutely honest, it kind of did me a favor, because the couple of years before had been so full on, especially with the IOD, that I had literally traveled every week for a year. I was shattered, right? I was so tired. So it was like, right, you can now not travel. I was like, ooh, that's nice. So for me, less travel was great, and the realization that we can now have a board meeting with the board pack on an app and forget about printing the stuff and actually move on to that next level, something I've been pushing in many boardrooms for. Now we were forced to, and I was quite happy with that as well, to be honest, because it needed to happen, and it is a lot easier, and we shouldn't take all the trees down to make paper all the time, right? So I think less travel, better focus, because the travel time was taken out, so I can really be strongly focused, and I've created a lot more things like papers and writings than what I used to. It has had a small financial impact in terms of the boards I serve on, for example. Of course, the non-executive directors' fees went down in line with the cut in salaries for the companies, and that should happen everywhere. I don't think it has happened everywhere, but that should be a given. We all share the pain together, right? And I would say that there's better business prospects for my organization, because governance has come into the limelight, and we work with CEOs and how they get the board to have trust in them. Many CEOs have had difficulties during this, and there's an increase in interest in learning more about how to develop trust with boards. So that's good, and the general governance is so countries outside of the UK want to have more knowledge around the governance that we run in the UK, where we are ahead of the game alongside sort of Australia and Canada. And we're very good at that piece, but the whole purpose and social impact and environmental intent has come into that, which we are less good at, but where I can draw on my experiences from Scandinavia.
Mm. So with that, the knock-on effect of COVID within leadership and teams, what do you think it's going to the residual effects going to be for leading well and building teams and getting a sort of team culture?
It's quite difficult to say exactly what it should be. What I would like to see it be is that we get flatter structures where people have more direct responsibility and accountability that they're happy to take. It's not having to have a boss sitting on top of you telling you what to do. So people actually, and I think the younger generations will do this quite naturally, grab hold of what needs to be done and just do it. Now that we are working from home in many ways, in some places productivity has gone up, right? Because people actually are more rested and are more able to do what they want to do. So I think, and I hope that this will stay with us. The ability to work from home. Obviously, when you deal with construction, for example, we can't be at home. But what it has done, for example, is accelerate off-site manufacturing, which is really, really helpful, where you can actually construct like a 1 or 2 bedroom flat in a factory with all robotics doing that, which means that the traditional scaffolding and this, which at Laing O'Rourke we don't really use. It's all cranes lifting pre-manufactured items onto, which means we can build a skyscraper pretty quickly. But actually the 1 bedroom flat comes in with fully fitted kitchen, fully fitted bathroom by robotics, and all your health and safety concerns, or many of them, reduces as well. So all good stuff.
Yeah, I've a lot of the clients I talk to the process they've been through, and they're going through like a trust revolution because they've had to send everybody home and they're all working from home. They've got to change the way they manage and the way they trust their employees to get things done. I don't know if you've got any advice to people to build that sort of level of trust.
Absolutely. I mean, so I spend a lot of time talking about trust. So there's something called the trust equation, which is trust is equals credibility, reliability, and intimacy, confidence, and stuff like that, divided by self-orientation or ego or self-interest. So the bigger your ego and self-interest is, the less trustworthy you will come across, right? So when you work from home and your self-interest is, I want to be asleep all day, then you're not reliable and you're not credible, right? So therefore, trust in you will be low. So if everybody would have a look at the trust equation, I didn't make it, unfortunately, someone else very clever did. But that is worthwhile considering. When I'm reliable, when I'm credible, when I keep confidentiality and can have intimate conversations, then people trust in me.
I like that. And conversely, for managers, how do they build their trust personally?
I think it's pretty much the same, right? It's the same principle, because when you have managers that lead from their ego or from their self agendas, they make bad decisions. They make decisions that are for them, not for the organization. So it was interesting. I just saw an article recently about corporate psychopaths, which I think we have all experienced, which are generally people who have too high egos, and therefore they go into manipulation and lies and making things opaque. And there's lots of red flags that we probably all experienced. And but generally often, I mean, boards don't want to get rid of them because somehow they fall for the manipulation and the grandeur as well. And we have to start watching out for that a bit more. People are not so interested because psychopaths is a bad word. We don't want to talk about it, but it's all around us, and it's driven by a very core ego that's too big for its own health, right?
Yeah.
And eventually they will fall over, but in it, if we leave them there for too long, they do a lot of damage.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? How people like that can often do very well, and and they often create toxic environments around them because people believe they've got to act in a specific way, and the knock-on effects can be massively damaging to trust and in the company and financially as well. There's been huge cases where that's happened. So within the process we've been through this year, there's been some real ups and downs. There's been just the crises which people couldn't have predicted. But do you have any tips around leading and being prepared for crisis and change? Because I don't think that people were very ready for what happened this year, but I think that people can be.
Yeah. So for me, I really like, in terms of change, I really like John Cotter's 8 steps of change a lot. And you can actually transfer them from organizational change onto societal change and cultural changes, in that the first 2 steps you really need to have in place is a sense of urgency. Without a sense of urgency, you will have no change. If people don't feel it urgently needs to be changed, no one will change anything, right? So if you don't have that, forget about it. Don't spend your time on it, right? But if you do have that, then the next step is to get a supportive coalition. But they have to be powerful. So it has to be many people putting a lot of pressure. Think of Black Lives Matter. Everyone rose suddenly. That was the supportive coalition for change. And change in boardrooms, conversations in the boardrooms I was working with at the time changed from an acceptance that actually there are unknown unknowns with regards to race that we now want to be more aware of. And so that was because we had the 2 things. We had a sense of urgency and we had a strong supportive coalition of change, which was everyone rising. Many people are still very powerful, right? That will always be very powerful. So I think the tips in how to manage it is stay close to your values and keep that ego in check.
Excellent advice. And you mentioned ego quite a lot within that, but are there any other mistakes you see people make in leadership?
To be absolutely honest, the mistakes I see people make are often driven from the self agendas, which is very sad but very true when you drill down into it. So you look at many of the big mess ups there has been in all kind of different ways. So Carillion, right? Why did the board not ask enough questions? Well, maybe for their self-interest, they were happy with the position, but they weren't really wanting to put the full time in. When you really dig in, it comes back into where are the egos, and maybe they did want to, but maybe they had executive teams that was not making things transparent enough so that they couldn't actually see what was going on. So, but then if you ask questions and things are opaque, then this is a red flag. You're dealing with dysfunction and you need to dig in deeper, spend more time, speak to the people in organizations. I mean, I have years ago, I had a situation where I always go away when we as a board go around to organizations and to speak to anyone on the floor, right? To the cleaner, the secretary, whoever, because you get a lot of really good information that way. And I worked with some activist investment managers for 5 years, so I learned a lot of good tips from them. And that's sort of digging around in the bins a little bit and speaking to everyone. And then what goes on. I found out that the CEO was a complete bully, right? Threw big books around in the room when they got angry, and it was really scary for the people around them. But in the boardroom, they were pussycats, right? So we didn't see that, but the staff did. And then we understood why maybe some of the productivity of some of the staff was not great. And then we had to address that by saying you need an anger management course, or that was the first level. And he took it. And he was very upset in the beginning that we said that, but he understood as he went along that helped him a lot.
Yeah,
so
that's really interesting.
Courageous conversations, right?
Yeah, and it speaks really to your tip about having a flatter structure, and actually that chain of command and that communication within chain of command breaks down when you have someone who's a bully, because you tell them what they want to hear, right? They never. Yeah, and they never actually have all the information because they're blocking themselves.
Do you know what's quite interesting? This blog I just posted, a blog about discrimination from men, male discrimination, and I spoke to a couple of men about it. Found it interesting that it didn't attract very much interest as compared to normally when I post something. And one man said to me, "Well, actually, I kind of wanted to write something there, but then I got fearful because I felt it could affect my position at work, right? If I say, yes, that's right, men should have more time as fathers, and we should have equal pay so that we don't have to be the breadwinners, so that it's either or. It's not, men are forced into a corner on this issue, right? But men are actually fearful of speaking out of it about it. That's really sad, right? That's really sad. We've got to take that away, otherwise we won't change anything, right?
Yeah. I think it happens in a lot of situations that people, like you said, it takes there to be a big movement and a consensus, so a lot of people can feel confident to speak out about stuff which they're feeling sort of every day.
That's right. I mean, I'm thinking by the time I'm 65, I don't care anymore. I don't. Then I'll be an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely.
But I'll be an even bigger nightmare.
What age does that happen? Do you think there's a point that it just sort of clicks in?
Yeah. So the point is when I don't have to pay for my children's education anymore, and they're off the payroll, right? So when they're off the payroll, I was like, right. Now I can be really outspoken. So I have to sometimes hold back a bit as well, because you don't want to be seen as a headline risk, but I speak my mind and I can't help that. It's what I do. And some people say I'm trouble. I'm not quite sure how trouble. I mean, what does that even mean? And other boards I had applied to join, I got told that they didn't take me because I scared the life out of the board members. So I was like, what does it mean? What does that mean? I don't understand. What do you think I'll punch them? I mean, what is it? Apparently honesty and directness is very scary.
It's like you said, not being neurotypical has been a plus point for you because you are completely honest and forthright about what you think, which is unusual, I suppose.
Well, but I'm lucky that we have gone into this place where we suddenly love the word authentic.
Yeah, bring your authentic self. Yeah.
I was like, great. If I'd been born 50 years earlier, I would have been like dead meat, right? So yeah, I like authentic. Yeah.
I love that. So Catherine's just asked a question just around, do you think big egos surround themselves with yes men who do not question the ego's actions?
Absolutely. Without any shadow of doubt, yes. Because they cannot tolerate being questioned. They get like an ego injury when you do that. And that feels really, really bad for them to have that. They are not prepared to have people disagreeing.
Like Trump.
I mean, it might force them to grow, right? And they're actually not interested in growing from the inside. And so where I welcome, one of my mottos is hire someone who doesn't fit in, right? Because that way you get challenged and your presumptions gets challenged. And I love getting challenged. If I sit in a room with people and we all agree on everything, how long can the conversation ever go, right?
Yeah, you just get in that echo chamber.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you learn from people who agree with you? You learn nothing, right?
Yeah. And time again, the research shows that diversity just across the board means that you get better boards, better decisions, more successful companies. It makes perfect sense.
I mean, nature meant it to be that. Nature creates a diversity. And I think nature meant for cognitively all these different mindsets coming together. And that includes like neurodiversity as well. But we get excluded, right? In many ways, we get excluded. So we miss out on some of that information we could have when we make decisions. So we make the wrong decisions when we have now put it down to a very small group of homogeneous people making decisions in the world. And that's what we've done for some hundreds of years, maybe longer. We make the wrong decisions. And I think if we look at the world today and judge the decisions that's been made and where we are, we are a species that's killing ourselves. Wow. I mean, that happens when you don't take everybody's opinion into account, right?
Yeah.
Someone has to think different. So we as neurodiverse people are not very good at following rules if they don't make any logical sense, right? So if someone asks me, how are you? It makes no sense to ask that question if you don't want to hear the answer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I want to tell you about
Yeah.
how I am, but you're not that interested. You just said it for some other reason that I don't get, right? So I think we challenge it, and that's why schools find us so difficult. But that is also what changes the world. The people who follow the rules are important, right? Absolutely. But they don't change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Great example when Greta Thunberg and her climate strike for school.
That's her own strike going on
Yeah.
there. And that's created a movement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people thought,
crazy.
yeah, actually, she's right. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What on earth are we doing?
It's always one person. Each one of us can change the world. Each one of us can be that Greta or that whoever, Martin Luther King, whatever. We all have that ability in us. Every single one of us can go out there and be that one person that makes some change happen, just like pow, and you didn't even quite understand how it happened, but it did. Generally from passion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the passions that drives that. But then the people who doesn't want to hear it are very quick to tear you down. I mean, Trump even spent time tearing down Greta because he took too much of his airspace,
didn't
right?
he? Yeah. Yeah.
Very low level, right?
But and basically bullying as well.
It's very low level. It's low. So you know this vertical maturity levels.
Yeah.
7 levels, like 85% of the population is on level 1, 2, and 3. Trump is probably at level 1, but what is his reason to develop further? He's rich.
Yeah.
He was the president of America. He seems to get whatever woman he wants. But what are his reasons to change? Nil. There are no reasons for him to develop himself, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to accept that a certain percentage of people are just that. And then we need to focus on the ones that might come along and self-develop and operate at a high level of consciousness, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about you, but it does feel like a relief that he's not going to be in office anymore. I
just thought, could he just misbehave a lot? Like the worse he gets, hopefully the more, like especially younger people, we get out voting to change, right? And maybe it was last century holding on with the fingertips to power, and maybe we're moving into a different paradigm now. I'm hoping so. I think the young people are different. The conversations I have with under 40-year-olds, they are much focused on purpose, on impacts, on values, and I really enjoy that. So we as a sort of older generation should stand behind them, put them in the chair at the table, stand behind them and support them in making the right decisions for their future. Right? Because they would like to have a future. And I would like my children and my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to have a future, but they don't if we don't make some changes.
No, very, very good point. This has been fascinating, and I could carry on talking to you for another couple of hours, but we're sort of approaching the end of our time. So last couple of questions, and if anybody's got any comments, please do post them up. But I think this brings us quite nicely on to what you would like your legacy to be for the future.
So I used to want to be like a Mother Teresa, but people kept saying, you're just not, Charlotte. So I was like, okay, fair enough. But I really think she gets her points across in really good ways that I would find. But yeah, I'm not, right? I'm not. But I would like to be remembered as being a change maker that has worked hard to make the world a better place, when I leave it than it was when I entered. Right now, from when I was born in the 60s to now, it's not better. It's not better. We have to work harder to make it a better place. That's what I would like people to remember me for doing.
Yeah, I'm sure they will do. And final question, we always ask for a book recommendation, just something that's been inspiring to you, either in your life or just something during lockdown.
So it wouldn't come as a huge surprise that the book recommendation that I've just given to my son as well is actually Love is Letting Go of Fear. which is a
Right.
book that talks just about, how peace of mind comes from wanting to not change other people. You just love them the way they are. And then you're much at peace of mind, true acceptance of differences. And that fear is something that's made up, right? We are loved. That's what we are. That's what we bring out. Fear is made up. And we have to continue to remember fear is not real. And that book teaches you that.
Oh, fantastic.
If I could pick up from Ben, thank you. Charlotte, I've been scribbling notes all over my notepad. Frantically, there's some great stimulation you've given all the listeners. Thank you very much. When we finish in a moment, would you please stay on the line? Ben and I will carry on chatting with you. But I just want to say on behalf of everybody, thank you for coming and being on the show. And I wish Global Governance Group every success. I'm sure it will be with the wisdom and the frankness. And it's great seeing how fellow neurodiverse people can say it as it is. I was always told off. I wrote a book called The Army Needs More Mavericks. And the general told me, nice book, and don't publish it if you want a career. And sadly, I didn't publish it. I should have done. But anyway, Charlotte. Yeah.
Kill the fear.
I'll have to rewrite it now. But Charlotte, thank you. Fabulous. Really, really good. And
thank you for everyone who's attended.
Yeah, we've all gained a lot. Some great questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.